Almost 8:20 here on LBC. We'll get into your reaction concerning the news with those rail strikes in a moment. But let's turn to another story which involves this winter and the heating in schools and colleges in England. Will be allocated a share of £500 million to spend on energy efficiency upgrades, which will help them obviously save on costs and also possibly cut down on consumption. Here with details on that is Conservative MP and Schools Minister Nick Gibb, joining me now. Good to see you again, Minister. How much of the £500 million will they get, and how do they get their hands on it? Good morning.
Well, good morning. Good to see you too, Nick. So a typical primary school will be getting about £16,000. A typical secondary school, about £42,000, and it's to be spent on, and they get the money straight away, and it's to be spent on things like lagging pipes or LED lighting or better thermostat control, things that they can rapidly put in place in schools to help bring down the costs of energy. And of course, over this winter, they'll be covered by the Energy Bill Relief Scheme as well.
And this is available immediately, is it, Minister?
Yes, so it is. So the money will be sent before the end of December. The schools will be able to look up today to see precisely how much they'll be getting, and then they can start planning to get contractors in.
And do we have any idea of how much the costs in a typical primary or secondary school, are they going to double? Do they have an extra 50%? Do we have any sense of just how high the costs might go?
Well, in terms of the costs schools generally face, 80% of their costs are staff, and the other 20% are for other items. So it's not a huge proportion of a school's budget, but we do know that but for the Energy Relief Scheme, bills would have gone very significantly higher than they have been in the past, and this is designed for the longer term, so that schools can actually save money on the amount of energy they're consuming. All
right. While I have the benefit on the line regards other matters and indeed staying with our schools, I'm sure you'll be aware of the tragedy of some people dying from strep A, and it's reported there's a possibility that antibiotics, penicillin, could be given to all children in primary schools where there has been a case of strep A as a preventative measure. Can you confirm that's going to take place, Minister?
Well, it is absolutely tragic for those families who've lost a child because of this bacteria infection. And the UK Health Security Agency are working very closely with the schools involved and with the parents at those schools to provide specific advice to them. The advice generally from the UK HSA is for parents to monitor symptoms, so high fever, sore throat, a red or raised rash on the skin. These are the symptoms of invasive strep A, and they should take action by phoning 111 or see their GP if their child does show their symptoms. And we're waiting for further advice from the Health Security Agency about specific measures that they are going to be recommending for schools where there has been an outbreak.
So you can't say that this will actually be offered then? You're not going to put these antibiotics or penicillin into schools where there has been a case?
That is an option that is open to the.
You are going to be doing it.
Well, we're waiting for advice from the HSA about this specifically. At the moment, they're talking and working closely with those schools that have had a tragic death and an outbreak of this bacterial infection.
We wouldn't want to wait too long, would we, Minister? This, disease waits for no man.
Indeed, and that's why they're working right now with those schools and providing specific advice to them. But an option is, of course, for having a prophylactic approach to antibiotics for schools that have had an outbreak. That is one of the options that the Health Security Agency are considering.
How do you react to the news that the biggest rail union has called for fresh dates for strike action over the Christmas period? Many of the good folk of Bognor Regis and Littlehampton, your constituency, I would imagine, rely considerably on their railways, Minister.
Yes, indeed, and for Christmas travel and also commuting. This is not a way to conduct negotiations. The Railway Delivery Group offered an 8% pay rise for over the next 2 years, and the RMT has not even put that proposal to its membership. And I would say to the unions, we do understand, of course, the costs that families up and down the country are facing as a consequence of higher energy prices and the cost of living going up. But this is not the way to negotiate. They need to get round the table, talk to the employers and come up with a settlement, not hold the country to ransom, not disrupt people's Christmas plans. This is the one time of the year when families want to get together, and causing this kind of disruption in the cold weather is simply not acceptable, and there's no need for it. We do need to make sure that pay settlements in the public sector are in line with pay awards outside the public sector, which are between 4% and 6%. So being awarded 8% over 2 years is a good settlement, and I hope the employers and the unions will keep negotiating and not disrupt people's lives.
Going back to your school brief, where are you on the online safety bill as the school's minister? What negative or otherwise impact does social media have on our country's school children? You'll be aware of the campaigning group, and yesterday I spoke with Judy and Annie Thomas, who are the parents of Frankie Thomas, who took her life aged 15 after viewing harmful social media. They and others are calling for a clampdown. Your views, Minister?
Social media is a very different thing from when we were at school, and
I don't think
children
it existed when I was at school.
Well, no.
I'm afraid it
no.
hadn't been invented. They didn't even have fax machines when I was at school, Nick. But do go on.
Well, you can imagine what a child's life is like
Yes.
today with bullying. And in my day, if you were bullied, you'd go home and then you were free from it. But it continues into the bedroom, it continues on social media, and then there are worse things still of people advising children to take measures on self-harm and suicide. We have to clamp down on these kind of activities. And the providers of social media, they do need to take responsibility for the kind of things that appear on social media. We cannot have children taking their own lives or being miserable and unhappy and suffering mental health as a consequence of this kind of activity on social media.
Those particular parents are obviously keen to access their child's social media accounts prior to her taking her life. Currently, that is blocked. Why won't the government allow that amendment?
Well, this is an issue that's going through the House of Commons. We have to take a balanced approach to how we deal with social media, making sure that the privacy issues are there. But I do understand the concerns of those parents about making sure that children are protected. And that's what these measures, the online safety bill, seeks to do, is to protect children in particular from harmful harmful images. And
in this tragic case, of course, this young girl has already taken her life, and they, understandably for closure, would like to see what they access. That surely you would support that, Minister?
Well, what the online safety bill enables parents to do is to select what things people are able to see, both for children or what they are able to see, and what the adults themselves can choose to have on their social media. So it's about balancing free speech, but also making sure that the decision making about what you see and what comes onto your own social media, that you have control over that as a consumer, and that's an important element of this legislation.
Lastly, the final set of headlines we turn to. The government has axed its target to build 300,000 homes a year, as you'll be aware. What is the new target? What would you and your colleagues hope to deliver for next year?
The target is still there. But the important thing is that we get consent of communities in building houses. We believe very strongly as Conservatives of helping people onto the housing ladder. We want people to own their own homes. We need to build those homes. But the way you deliver those targets is by having consent of local communities to take into account the particular local pressures, like the constraints on whether you're near a national park or...
You think you'll hit your 300,000 target next year then, Minister?
Well, there are very particular market issues at the moment in terms of house building. We built 235,000 homes last year. And if you look at the last 4 years, 3 of the last 4 years, we had the biggest increases in housing supply in 30 years, in 3 of those last 4 years, 2.2 million homes since 2010. We will do everything we can to help young people and not so young people onto the housing ladder because it matters. But we do need to make sure that we take into account local concerns, because that's how you get consent to build houses and to create more homes. And if you have that consent, then you will be able to more likely meet those targets. And also the measures in the bill also require building companies that have permission to build, to actually build those houses, not simply to sit on them and seek speculative planning applications elsewhere. So this should increase house building because we want people to be able to own their own homes. That's something we believe in as Conservatives.
Schools Minister Nick Gibb, thank you for your time here on LBC, and grateful to you. 8:29 is the time. Let's come back to the rail strikes and your reaction. Mohammed in South Shields, what do you say to this news, Mohammed? Good morning.
Oh, just not good news, Nick. Great show, by the way. I'm going from Newcastle to Manchester Airport on the 28th. Nick. Now, what people need to realise is the East Coast Main Line's not working from Durham all the way to York because engineering works, nothing's happening. So they said, we'll get you via Carlisle.